Today we're going to attempt to answer these two questions. Number one, why do we oftentimes enjoy older music from our favorite artists more than their new music? Number two, why do older people, such as parents and grandparents, think our music is bad or just, quote, sounds like noise? Let's get into it. First off, previous generations thinking something new that is often an integral part of a younger generation's lives isn't a new phenomenon. Like we've seen explored in a variety of historical and contemporary pieces, people prefer and often think what they grew up experiencing is superior to what other generations experience. The whole, back in my day we didn't have cell phones, was once, back in my day we didn't even have a radio. What I'm saying is you can keep going back. And it's going to be the same thing with the previous generation being like, well, it was during kids. Every generation has this back in their day that they oftentimes deem better than what the current youth is doing. Trends in music and whether or not new music is good, these arguments aren't new. Contemporaries of Beethoven, the Beatles, Michael Jackson, and more didn't like them because it wasn't like their good old music from back in the day. And wow, in my day we didn't listen to this. This isn't a new thing. It literally applies to everything. So that is going to be kind of the root reason of why people that are older don't like contemporary music. With artists that have an especially large and oftentimes varied discography, you're bound to hear fans talking about how their older stuff is better. Things like BTS's earlier songs are better than their new songs. Twice's cute songs are better than their newer, more mature songs. Why do we hear these comments so often? Is BTS's new music really not good anymore? Is Twice's recent music just horrible? Let's find out. This is a topic that has been covered in seemingly endless articles. Why do older people hate new music? It seems like everyone is asking, but no one actually has an answer. However, there are a few reasons postulated by science, and we're going to get into two of them right now. The first is due to the brain's declining ability to differentiate different musical elements, such as chord changes. What this really means is, as a listener, you are literally not hearing the music correctly or how it's meant to be heard because you're older and you can no longer differentiate different things music-wise. It can be very subtle or it can be very big, but this is a big reason. I mean, you can look at this just by, popping a song in a audio editor and just distorting a couple of things. It's going to change how you hear the song, right? So any sort of distortion is going to change the song, and although it might be just a minor change as we age, it can still be enough in some songs to make it less than enjoyable to hear. The second reason is the mere exposure effect. The best way I can sum this up is by saying that the mere exposure effect is the more exposure you have to something, in this case music, the greater the probability is that you'll enjoy it. While you can probably think of musical and non-musical examples where this isn't true for you, it does make sense in the regard that you may like BTS's Blood, Sweat, and Tears because you've listened to it several times over the years since it was released, whereas you've only had 1 year to listen to BTS's On. But anyway, the mere exposure effect helps explain why as you get older, you're not really into new music. If your parents have been listening to Bon Jovi, Pink Floyd, then they're probably not going to enjoy listening to newer things like the Arctic Monkeys because they're not accustomed to listening to them. And they also have no emotional connection, which, as we will discuss soon, plays a big role in our music taste. Anyway, it's not familiar to them, and therefore it's met subconsciously and even consciously with wariness and oftentimes judgment. In conclusion, the more you talk about something, see something, and experience something, the more likely you are to be like, you know what? I like this. I'm vibing with it. That's really what this is. Now then, that we've gone into kind of the science, let's also go into when our taste in music develops. So if we stop caring about new artists and music as we age, when do we develop our musical tastes? Your music taste is growing as a young teen. So let's think ages 13 to 15. This is when our tastes are really solidifying. Psych Today says, the songs and artists who are popular during this time become familiar, comforting parts of your life. There's already a foundation present at this time due to environmental influences as well. From growing up hearing your family listen to certain artists and genres and judging other artists and genres, from hearing songs on the radio, at the store, or in a TV show or movie, and listening to your friends' music. These things all influence your own tastes. You usually find the type of style, genre, and specific songs you like the most during these young teenage years. I also find this interesting because if you look at a lot of the active K-pop content creators, it seems like to me they are under 18. And this actually makes a lot of sense that they would be actively creating this content because their tastes are still developing and they're also the target demographic. And they're the target demographic because they're actively going through a lot of the emotions that are associated with a lot of popular songs, you know, first love, first breakups, peer pressure, finding who you are, etc. And this isn't to say that people over the age of 18 don't go through these things, because they definitely do, but oftentimes when you're an adolescent, because your brain is developing and there's just a whole lot different hormones at work and the like, you tend to experience things at more of a magnified level than you do when you are older. So therefore, it makes sense that you are going to more have a greater reaction, I guess would be a good way of looking at it, to these songs, which is why you are the target demographic. By the time you're in your late 20s or early 30s, most people are no longer actively seeking new music, particularly new artists. You kind of just like what you like at this point. Not to say that you won't, you know, add some people to your list, but I mean, it's kind of there. It's kind of, you know, set in stone. I mean, even when I was at university, which is ages 18 to 22, the only new artists I actively sought out were Ellie Goulding, Imagine Dragons, and Congos. That was literally it. And this was only because I had new friends at this time who liked these artists. So that was literally the only reason. I did not explore new music because I was in a new hectic life stage and couldn't actively keep up with new music and artists because I had more stress and had to reprioritize my whole life. This would explain why adults generally don't keep up with music. They're reprioritizing their whole lives around new, more essential activities like a career, starting a family, etc. So it's fair to say your musical taste is developing and indeed discovered as you yourself are discovering who you are. This is also why companies market to an adolescent audience. You don't see them marketing new artists to people in their 30s, 40s, 50s, and higher. This isn't just K-pop specific either. This is a global music industry strategy. It's taught in a lot of marketing courses, and it can just, in general, be observed. So I want you to take the time to really examine why your favorite artists are your favorites. And also, when they became your favorites. Really think about this. I just asked you to think about your favorite artists and songs. So now I want to ask you to think about the first time you heard that song or artist. What were you doing? Were you hanging out at home with your friends? Were you at school watching random videos on YouTube? Were you having a fun night out on the town? You might not be able to recall specific memories for every song you love, but you can probably do this for at least a few of them. Just for fun, I'll add an example for me. So I remember when Fireflies by Owl City came out. I was 16 when this song came out. My best friend at the time and I were driving from the mall back to her house. We were at a stoplight right in front of this art museum near her house. Came on the radio, and when we got back to our house, we sat in the car and finished listening to it because we both loved it and wanted to see if the host would tell us who and what it was. They did not tell us, so that was disappointing, but we did find out eventually it was Fireflies. But, you know, that's a very specific memory I have, and it's something whenever I go through that stoplight, I usually think about that. It's a very specific, and I don't have that with every single song ever, but there's a few of them that I do have these specific memories. So this is an example of a positive memory and the nostalgia associated with it. The happiness of just hanging out with a good friend. However, they don't have to be positive memories. As you may have heard or even experienced, people often associate songs with ex-partners or ex-friends. I, for one, cannot listen to a few songs without just being like, oh my gosh, they really did me that way, huh? Like, they ruined the song for me. So be careful doing that, by the way, just FYI. You might associate your favorite songs with less than positive memories too. However, you can still view those songs positively in some ways. I'll give another example because why not? So, all of my favorite K-pop songs from 2017 are more meaningful to me than any other year in K-pop, solely because of how bad 2017 was for me personally. And yet, these groups and their music brought me such comfort and inspiration and happiness during that horrible time in my life. I actually think this is why a lot of people remember certain music fondly. Like, yes, there's the happy memories, but I think a lot of people also remember things for helping pull them through a difficult time. You know, you remember things, kind of like you remember friends for being there for hard events in your life. You remember the music and the artists that helped you through difficult times. And it doesn't have to be a big life event. It can be stuff like freshman year of high school was super hard. Classes were taking a lot out of me, but Momoland really helped me through it all and just gave me such joy. It could be things like that. It doesn't have to be, you know, like anything like super life altering. It's just like the comfort it brings to you is what I'm getting at. And the nostalgia you now associate with those songs or those artists. Nostalgia plays a big part in why we prefer older songs from my favorite artists, but we should also keep in mind that people change, and so do their music preferences. People change. Yes, even your faves. You've changed. Your music taste has evolved. You've also been exposed to more music. That just happens as you get older, right? Like, it just happens. So let's take ARMYs, for example, okay? A fair number of ARMYs began their K-pop journey with BTS, and now these same fans are multi-stans. BTS was a gateway into K-pop for a lot of them, but as they experienced new genres, artists, styles, songs, etc., they found that they liked other artists and songs more. I'm not saying other artists are better than BTS. Instead, I'm saying that as you broaden your horizons and consume more varied media, you're bound to find other artists you like, and sometimes you like them more than the original. Exposure has given you more options to like and dislike, and these options supplement and alter your current music taste. And I also want to say, if you got into BTS with like DNA, for example, that was a big thing for a lot of people. You probably, maybe not, but I'm going to assume you probably associate DNA very positively. And you're like, man, that was such a great time in life. And man, I loved that song, because it was your first song you like loved from BTS. Okay? Maybe not, let me know in the comments, but that's how I feel like I am sometimes with artists I'm into. The first song I ever heard ends up being a really big deal to me. While we love our favorite artists, have we also considered that, like us, they too have changed? They've changed as individuals and artistically, which impacts the work they produce. Maybe you just don't like the style they've chosen. Maybe they went from tropical house EDM to trance EDM. Or maybe they've changed their theme, their concept. If you like lyrics and themes that talk about rising above peer and societal pressure and being your own person and standing up to authority figures, which, by the way, pretty punk rock, I'm just saying, meaning that you're kind of into the rage against the machine and bite the hand that feeds mentality, you're probably not going to be into a pivot to, let's just talk about, love and stuff like that. It's not that you don't like them, but you're still more heavily invested in relating to those songs about, being your own person and stuff. So ITZY has this kind of love yourself and not bound to societal pressure image and lyrical theme. BTS and BAP also heavily relied on this idea early in their careers. If they all of a sudden change things completely, let's just say ITZY goes to a cute concept, not that everyone's gonna hate it, but I do think that there's gonna be some problems with some of the fans being like, this is not what I signed up for. And I think that is perfectly valid to be like, this is not what I signed up for. As long as you are not giving any hate to the group specifically, who cares? Like, you don't have to be a fan. No one's making you, right? But I also want to say, so like BTS's more mainstream releases like Boy With Love, DNA, and Fake Love might not resonate with you as much as like No and No More Dream and On do if you're kind of more into this, Rage Against the Machine type theme, right? So just keep that in mind. You probably have a certain preference for themes, styles, things like that. It's not all about sound necessarily, it's also about the meaning, right? We get that. Another part of it really could be that you or groups of fans just prefer a particular sound, genre, or lyrical message. Preferring something else doesn't mean the other is bad, and it doesn't mean their music, aesthetic, and lyrics are not as good as they were before. We also more commonly see changes with concepts, so Twice going from cute to a more mature concept. You know, their music is definitely still poppy, but it's not as bubblegum pop-like as it used to be, in my opinion. And some people have not been a fan of this, right? So we can see it in action. It is okay for artists to change, and it's okay for you to change. I want you to remember that, forever. Thank you. Why do so many people like the older releases from their favorite artists more than the more recent music? There's a couple of reasons. One, we kind of talked about the mere exposure effect, where familiar music just feels better and sounds better to us, right? We talked about when you get into music, kind of dictates your own tastes, your own preferences. Also, nostalgia. Dude, that matters so much, I think. I think to me, that's probably number one. My final thoughts are this. Music is subjective, not objective. You cannot make objective statements about music. While you can make objective statements as a vocal or musical expert when it comes to production value, vocal strength, instrument skill, etc., this is not something that can be done when accounting for people's individual musical likes and dislikes. Music taste is personal and therefore subjective. So if you enjoy a song, keep on keeping on. Don't worry about what other people say about music you enjoy. Everyone just likes different things, and that's okay.